Hi, everyone. Rich Chien with the San Francisco Environment Department, Senior Environmental Specialist with the Climate Program. And hopefully you can just see my slides.
We can just see your slides. You're good.
Okay, great. So sorry, I had to step away for the first part of that, the last session, and came in at the end. Sounds like there was some really great policy discussion. I'll have to go back and visit that, and hopefully I'm not like repeating or otherwise conflicting with what anyone else said. But I think Avni and I were sort of asked to talk about some of our experiences on process in terms of engaging with communities to develop equitable solutions to all of our building decarbonization goals and objectives. So what we're going to talk about a little bit is our work together on something we call the San Francisco Anchor Partner Network. I'm going to talk a little bit about the origins, the process, and some of the impacts, and I think Avni will fill in many blanks around that. But because of the theme of this meeting, I threw in a few slides at the end that refer to a memo that was released just about a month ago by a law firm for Menlo Spark, which is sort of a scan of kind of the landscape of relevant laws and regulations around tenant protections and flagging key issues as they might relate to building decarbonization policies that we might all be thinking about as local governments. So just and San Francisco figures prominently in that. So threw together a couple of slides summarizing what we saw when we started reviewing that memo. So it's a little schizophrenic, but hopefully you can bear with me. So starting with talking about our climate action goals for San Francisco, our climate action plan was released in December of 2021, and we really started to think about updating our CAP in late 2018, really. And we knew at the time that it would heavily involve both buildings and with a really strong equity focus. Through the Anchor Partner Network, which Avni and I will discuss more in detail, we started to have these conversations with a wider swath of community members who kind of weren't the usual suspects, if you will. And we learned that a lot of them care deeply about these topics, and some of them went on to have a pretty big impact on how City and County of San Francisco is trying to tackle the climate crisis. It led to some stakeholders successfully getting the Board of Supervisors to pass a climate emergency resolution in 2019, which really jump-started our CAP development process. The Focus 2030 or technical report was one of the outcomes of that resolution, and it asked the Department of the Environment to sort of take a high-level look at would we be able to meet our climate goals, which at the time were to be net zero emissions by 2050. And with that report was really when we started talking openly and broadly about building electrification, really. And concurrently, we were also working on another project, which sort of was the genesis of some of the work that we did with the Anchor Partner Network, which was a grant project called Zero Cities, which took place over a period between 2017 and 2019. And it was funded by the Urban Sustainability Directors Network to support these cities to develop building decarbonization roadmaps with a very strong equity focus and sort of really guiding us to think about how to co-create these solutions with community. And all of that mirrored a lot of what we were already thinking about would be in our climate action plan. As I was looking at this map, it just sort of occurred to me that with all of these big cities kind of working together but separately on sort of thinking about building decarbonization and equity issues. I think it probably has had a really big impact in terms of informing how, you know, cities from different parts of the country are trying to address these very same issues. So one of the key tasks was to conduct some sort of community-based planning to ensure solutions advance equity and community priorities. And one of the tools that was provided to us as one of these zero cities was an ecosystem mapping product, which consultants on the core team serving the zero cities sort of did an evaluation of relevant organizations that could be aligned with what we were trying to achieve with this equitable community engagement effort. And that led us to working with Emerald Cities, represented here by Avni Jamdar, as well as PODER. PODER stands for People Organizing to Demand Environmental and Economic Justice, and a longstanding community organization based in the Mission District in San Francisco. And so we called this partnership between SFE, Emerald Cities, and PODER the San Francisco Anchor Partner Network. And what we did together was we designed and held 5 public workshops over about a 9-month period. And we also had dozens of one-on-one conversations with local environmental justice organizations, affordable housing advocates and providers, tenants' rights advocates, labor groups, building industry representatives, and others. And we eventually reached and engaged with well over 250 stakeholders through this process, including sort of that thing of bringing our work together with some other stakeholders who are really focused on pushing the city to be more aggressive in terms of our climate action plan. So through that whole process, we had all these conversations. There was a meeting about deed restricted affordable housing. There was a meeting about what we were calling market rate housing. There was a meeting that focused on workforce development. And a lot of those key recommendations actually were directly reported as actions in the climate action plan. When you look at this list of key recommendations, of course, everything makes total sense now. But it was much more potent and powerful to have these coming directly from community voices. And just to touch on some of the progress we're making on some of these, I'll skip number 1 for now, since I think that's, you know, sort of, there's a lot of questions about what the city or what we could all be doing to protect tenants. And I'll touch on that a little bit in my last slides. As for number 2, this is obviously really important to reach these populations, BIPOC and low-income owners and tenants. So one thing that our energy team has been doing for the last couple of years is a project called Energy Access SF. And it was basically designed to specifically target providing information about BayREN and other energy efficiency incentives, electrification rebates to key neighborhoods in San Francisco where there are high number of low income and BIPOC community members. So we've targeted our outreach with multicultural and, you know, in language outreach materials to these communities to just sort of get the word out about these financial and technical assistance services. As for number 3, I'll just mention that San Francisco, Berkeley, Oakland, led by Rising Sun and some other, a lot of other stakeholders are involved in including Emerald Cities, involved in a state-funded grant project called the High Road Training Partnership, which is really about what changes need to be made to support the growth of residential decarbonization industry. and to try to ensure that these jobs, which I think goes without saying are pretty well known to be sort of low road jobs. And when we say low road, high road basically means high road would be jobs that pay well enough that they can be family sustaining jobs that have career pathways, stability, good benefits, labor standards in place, and opportunities for growth, basically. We want to see the residential decarbonization market as it exists today, which is, very fragmented, kind of low road environment in general. How can we make sure that the future growth of that industry is more of like a high road work environment for people, for all of the retrofits that we all need to do across the state and within the city? So that's an effort that's going on. And then I'll talk more about number 4 as well, which was to create what we're calling a climate equity hub to connect building owners and others with education, high road service contractors, services, rebates, et cetera. So as for the Climate Equity Hub, the concept is a one-stop shop to accelerate residential building decarbonization, drive workforce development, and advance equity through the provision of multilingual, culturally competent support and resources for homeowners, renters, and workers, and to make sure that the city can support this in every way that we can. So SFE has worked with a consultant who is built off the work of the Anchor Partner Network and have facilitated a stakeholder process to scope the hub's key functionalities, structure, management, funding, and long-term sustainability. Phase 1 recommendations are pretty much complete and will be coming out soon. Phase 2 would be moving on to begin the implementation process. And in closing, as I mentioned earlier, Menlo Spark asked, really shifting gears here, but Menlo Spark had asked a law firm, Schutt Mahali Weinberger, to kind of do a scan of relevant legal issues, frameworks, structures in place that could either support or hamper our goal to ensure that tenants are protected through sort of mass building decarbonization policies and programs. And San Francisco does figure prominently in some of the examples, just sort of laying out existing approaches to how pass-throughs are handled between landlords and tenants, looking at the difference between large buildings, which are categorized as 6 units or more, and small buildings, which are 5 units or less. There are things in place. There are rules in place about how landlords who make capital investments, improvements to buildings, are able to recoup their costs, yet with guardrails in place to sort of prevent excess rent increases or cost increases for existing tenants.
Hey, Rich, I just want to give a quick time check. We need to switch to Avni's presentation here pretty soon.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
And sort of our preliminary takeaways are basically, downtime allowances where the retrofits are happening. If they're simple replacements, it may not be an issue. We can use these existing capital improvement pass-through rules for decarbonization requirements. Definitely can be applied to projects where the projects are receiving public funds. And then we think the current legal environment appears to favor the city's ability to prevent an excess burden on renters from decarbonization and electrification. So that closes out my section, and I'm going to pass it on to Avni next.